for you. Today, we are welcoming well-known author and vegan hero, Ruby Roth. Thank you so much for joining us, Ruby. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. There's a lot of folks out there like me who have all of your books, including the cookbook. In fact, look, I've got it right here. The Help
Thank you.
Yourself Cookbook. I love it.
I say it's designed. It looks like it's designed for children, but it's for busy or lazy adults as well.
It is. And we'll talk about that because there is one thing in there that you write to parents that I love at the very end, and I want to talk about that. But first, I want to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself to some folks that might not be aware of you just yet. Like I said, folks, I have all four. I think it's four, right?
Yeah.
No, four. All four of your books. I couldn't find the other three because they're lost in the book shuffle in the mess of the rooms that my kids have. But go ahead and just give us a quick start about how you kind of fell into this world and what you're doing now.
I am an artist. I was always going to be an artist, and I wanted to create art that had a purpose. I was more interested in that than being an artist, a gallery artist that was, purely expressionistic. So when I graduated college, I came back down to LA where I'm from, and I was teaching art at an after-school program, and I was already vegan at the time, for probably had been for several years. And the kids started asking me questions about what I was eating and not eating. And I went to go look for a book that I could bring in and we could talk about and share and maybe do an art project on. And what I found were very few books, first of all. And what was out there was about a talking animal or a talking vegetable, which I thought took away from the very rich emotional lives of the animals that we could actually talk about, and also B, from children's intelligence and what they're capable of understanding. So I have a social justice background as well as an art background, and that was a moment where I decided to put those two things together and create the books that I wanted to read to my students.
And not only did you write them, but you also illustrated them. And I think your illustrations, they're so you. Like when you see, there's such a nice through line with all of your books. And guys, talking to your kids about veganism, plant-based, whatever you want to call it, guys. Because let's talk about the difference between plant-based and vegan, right? So vegan, Ruby, you correct me if I'm wrong, but vegan, in my opinion, is tied to the animal well-being very specifically, and is kind of overarching, right? It was one of the hottest terms of like 2017, 2018. So it is trending, right? You see a lot of brands putting it on as a marketing thing.
It's actually the fastest growing food category in the market.
Which I love. We're seeing a lot of things like the vegan, Beyond Burgers and stuff like that hit the market. So it is becoming easier than ever to eat this way. But, when you're focusing on plant-based, to me, I think plant-based seems to be a bit more broad, a bit more generic. But to me, and I think you reference this in your most recent cookbook, it's vegan, plant-based, whatever you want to call it. But, and we were talking before the show, it's all good. Like, it's all a good thing.
I think this is a large shift that our entire culture is leaning toward as we educate ourselves about the benefits and the motives behind it, and the particular time and place that we find ourselves in, the context of our era, with all the problems that we face, from mental health to physical health to environmentalism to water waste and energy, everything across the board. So as people start to understand it, I think we're kind of seeing this use of the word vegan, and then people who know that they don't know all the motives, so they're more comfortable just saying plant-based because they know they're not exercising all of the practices. So in either case, I see a big shift in the markets leaning toward plant-based lifestyles.
Yeah, me too. It just seems like everybody seems to be a bit more receptive. And I mean, even in my books and my stuff that I put together, I use the word plant-based a lot more than vegan. But if someone were to ask me, I mean, obviously it's all good. Like, it's all about love anyways. So whatever you need to label me as, like, that's totally cool. I don't eat animals. So whatever that is. I want to take a section from your latest cookbook here. Okay. and it's perfect for what we're talking about. So this, folks, she writes the whole book to kids. Basically, it's a kids book, and it's written so kids can understand and kids can follow along and stuff. So instead of saying like a dash of this or a dash of that, it's like, hey, shake, shake, shake this on top, which I love. But it talks about a plant-based diet, more broadly, veganism, is about protecting the things we love and value. The benefits extend even beyond the practicalities of health and saving animals and the environment to our behavior in the world. When you wrote your book, Vegan is Love, I think that one is probably one of my favorites that helps talk to a kid who might be wanting to explore veganism or thinks they want to be vegan, but they don't really know what it means, right? So this is the thing that I wanted to really get into with you is like, if you have a child that approaches you, you are let's say you're a meat eating family. All you've ever known is just a Western diet, and your child comes to you. I get a couple videos sent to me every couple months of kids that the parent records the child talking to them about, okay, you're saying you want to be vegan. What does that mean?
Mhm.
What about eggs? Don't you like eggs? Yeah, but what are they made out of? Right? They're baby chicks, right? Or whatever. Or they come from chickens. Um, those types of things. How do you approach that conversation from the very start with your child?
When a child is saying they want to be vegan.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I think that's an opportunity for the parent to really do a lot of good listening and have a conversation with them, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too early to begin learning how our choices affect the public realm. So when a child has an inclination toward practices that help us live better, not only in our own bodies, but creating the kind of culture of peace and life force energy instead of death force energy that we see so much of all the time, I think you start including them in whatever you're learning. That's how I spoke to my students, my former students. I was still learning at the time, and anytime I learned something new, I would say, hey, check this out. This is what I learned about food, or this is what I learned about the animal agriculture industry. Can you believe this? Like, this is what's happening. And so I don't think anything has to be too tailored for a child's brain. If they don't understand something, they'll ask more questions about it, or the conversation will continue and continue as time goes on. But I think it's a great opportunity to learn the surprising benefits of veganism for kids is that it doesn't only benefit your physical and mental well-being, but it makes a child more aware of how they treat others and their position in the world. So it kind of serves as an otherwise absent initiation that we don't have in our culture to say, hey, here you are in the planet. You are part of a community of living beings. We are watching you. You are watching us, and we expect you to do right by us, and we will do right by you. And so I think it's great when a kid has an inclination towards something like that, and you answer to it and bring them up in it.
Now, if the parent, again, in this particular situation, might not be vegan, I think it would be really cool for the parents just try it out with a kid, right? And there's some basic things that they could do, right? I feel like people think it's this huge mind shift, right? Like, if I don't eat meat, what am I going to eat? Of
Well,
course,
it's a subtractive way of thinking instead of thinking about what you're adding in. So my primary advice to people wanting to make the transition is don't think about taking anything away at first. You want to just add more things in. And the good stuff is going to start crowding out the stuff that actually makes you feel not so great.
yeah. I feel like the plate, if you look at the plate, it's like 75%, protein or meat, basically. You got like 5% vegetables, and those are like potatoes, French fries, right?
Right.
Very, very little fruit. So if we can balance that plate, get like even the government, the USDA guidelines or whatever, with the a 25% fruits, 25% protein, whatever that means to you, 25% carb or not carbs, fruits, veggies, whole grains and protein, fruits, veggies, whole grains and protein, 25% of each of those. I think that works. I don't think you need to overthink it though. I just think that you just got to find those foods that you and your kids both love and incorporate them, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think sometimes people don't think uh, that a salad is a full meal. You can make a salad a full meal and pack in all kinds of things and all kinds of colors. And it takes a while. There's a learning curve for someone to say, oh, that actually does fill me up. I'm eating enough of it. I can eat an entire cucumber. Whereas before took just a couple of slices off, you can eat the whole thing. You're going to feel full and satisfied. And maybe at first, if you don't, that also takes some time for your body to adjust.
Yeah, your body's getting a lot more fiber, a lot more nutrients. That fiber makes you go to the bathroom, and that's okay. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to me about prep in the kitchen and involving your kids. Actually, before we do that, we talked about salads. I want to talk about the different kinds of greens in your experience that kids have been more open to giving a try, right? For me, like my kids, they love the taste of like an iceberg type of thing, but for me, iceberg has like no nutritional value, so I'm not going to bring that into my family. But I think like a romaine, like a long leaf romaine, if you dice that
Mhm.
up, it can very easily take the place of an iceberg. um but what other greens for you do you feel like kids are like more receptive to, especially when they're starting out, and then we can maybe get them to the big scary kale, right? It's not.
Well, I think kale is one of the best things to get into first, because the way I make it and the way I show how to make it in the cookbook is saturating it with olive oil until it gets really soft. It's almost the same as if you sauteed it. One of the ways you can do that is by putting it in a bowl and mashing it up with your hands. You kind of massage the olive oil into the leaves of the kale. And that is a great job to hand over to your kid, because that's basically, it feels like a fun, get your hands dirty art project that kids like to do. And you don't even have to talk about whether they're going to taste it or not. If you have them make it enough times and it's their job to add the stuff and mash it up and massage it up, then eventually they're gonna lick a finger. They're gonna have a little bite here or there. It's really hard to resist tasting something that you've prepared yourself.
So
So
you
I don't think people have to be scared of kale. I think
right on.
that's one of, if you can get right to kale, then everything else in between your iceberg lettuce and kale kind of falls into place.
Right on. And so after kale, though, what do you think? Maybe a spinach?
I think spinach is a good idea. Tatsoi, which are little leaves.
Yeah.
Kids like little things that appeals to them, things that they can hold and play with. I have some recipes in the book, where you take, the leaf popper recipe, which is just, like a little bit of seed cheese or seed cream cheese on a leaf, and they get to, pinch it up and eat it bite by bite. Kids like that kind of little stuff. So, that's anything. That's arugula, which you think kids don't like because it's strong, but anything anything you raise a kid on and start introducing into the routine over and over and over again will begin to be normalized. And I think it's important for parents to remember that there's no universal kid food, that around the world, kids eat what their culture raises them on. So, there's little teeny kids eating spicy kimchi and jalapenos and all kinds of stuff in their cultures. And we think that's weird here and that kids don't like it. It's an absolute myth.
Yeah. We teach them not to like certain things by our reaction, like, ooh, you gonna try this and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The ambivalence creates a certain atmosphere that kids pick up on, whether you're saying anything or not.
Yeah. Interesting. So we always get this question all the time about nutrition, right? How to get the proper nutrition, and are our kids getting the proper nutrition? Um, you know, what do you say about nutrition? I mean, I don't think you're a dietitian or a licensed dietitian or nutritionist. I'm not either, right? So like what is it that you say about that concern for parents as they're starting off on this diet?
I'm the type of vegan that leans toward raw food and superfoods. I don't purchase much processed soy or faux meats. So I have a largely, and what I recommend to people so that they feel the best and there's more chance of longevity in the practice, is to incorporate whole foods and superfoods. So there's that's what's in my book. They're all familiar ingredients plus superfoods like spirulina and goji berries and coconut oil. I like the medicinal mushroom powders like the reishi and the maitake and the
Chaga.
chaga, turkey's tail. There's so many. And that's what I eat. That's what I eat. I find ways to put it in my smoothies. And so I do think there's a learning curve when you get into veganism that, you know, you can just cut things out and then you're left with the standard American diet minus meat and dairy, which leaves you nothing upon nothing. So you do want to get nutrient dense foods into your diet. And that we all know the whole food, you know, you can go to the produce section, you know, those whole foods, and then you want to start reading into the other nutrients that are important for everybody. I've seen up to 90% of Americans are deficient in B12 and D. So as you transition to veganism and you start reading the cookbooks and understanding why people are including certain foods, then you start incorporating these foods into your diet and you're getting more nutrition than most everybody in America.
Yeah, and why do you think people are, you know, deficient in those things? I mean, we're talking about all people, not just vegans. D, B12, these are things that they're deficient in. Why is that?
Well, B12 is a bacteria-based vitamin. The soil, everything is degraded. Our soil is degraded. The seeds we're using to plant food are degraded. So we're not getting B12 because everything's over sanitized. We would have been getting it had we been, you know, eating carrots straight out of the ground in the little grooves. But we don't have that anymore. And if there is soil in there, it's not the most nutrient dense soil either. So the standard American diet is so deficient in minerals that a lot of the food is actually, you know, full of additives. And you know, you'll get your milk and it'll say, you know, the addition of iron, and it's because there's nothing in there to begin with.
Right.
And so as you transition to plant-based, you start getting those things not from vitamins, which are, you know, usually isolated. They come from synthetic. You know, I know when I realized what the vitamin industry is and how it's so awful. Like most of them are overseas because they can't pass United States regulations. They cause tremendous amounts of pollution. And I remember, you know, my idea of a vitamin, you know, vitamin C even is like, oh, you know, it's like dried pineapple. You're getting the essence of that. It's nowhere. It's chemical upon chemical to make these supplements. And so I recommend getting them from food you're eating. The cofactors are in there. It's built in naturally. Everything you need comes together in that food.
Talk to me about some staples, some things that you absolutely have to have in your kitchen. And, you know, people like you and me, we have random things that other folks might not have, like ginger powder, you know, maca, weird things, blue algae, right? We might have that stuff in our pantry. But if you're just starting off in this lifestyle and you're kind of transitioning or you're learning, what are the things that you have to have? Like maybe, I don't know, I'm putting you on the spot here, but like maybe like your top 5 things that you have to have in your pantry to get started.
Okay, by no order of importance, but I love a good olive oil. I need a good salt, whether that's a sea salt or liquid aminos like Bragg's, which is kind of a soy sauce. If you don't like soy, there's alternative in coconut aminos that are on many shelves now.
Cool.
I need a spirulina. I love Health Force Nutritionals and that brand, and also everything from Longevity Warehouse.
How do you use spirulina? Because I mean, go
I
ahead.
put it in my smoothies, a sprinkle, so it'll turn the whole thing green pretty quickly. And then I also sprinkle it on salads, and I will put it on popcorn too. I've been eating, I haven't been a huge popcorn fan, but it's like in my snack repertoire at the moment. But I cover it in spirulina and turmeric.
Nice.
And I really love that. So spirulina is definitely a staple, and the blue-green algae. Those are on my top shelves and in use all the time. What was that, 3?
I think that's 4. You got one more.
I always have some kind of probiotic in the fridge.
There you
So
go.
whether it's like a vegan yogurt or a kimchi or pickled, any kind of pickled things that are probiotic based.
Now, some people are probably just like, wait a minute, did she just say vegan yogurt? There are so many awesome vegan yogurts out there, folks. You've got Kite Hill is one of my favorite almond
Yeah.
yogurts. So delicious. Has a coconut one. It's kind of like ice cream, if you ask me. And then you've got a couple others. What else? What else is out
There's
there?
all kinds. There's rice based, there's coconut
Yeah,
based,
yeah.
there's almond based, there's cashew based. And then there's some on the shelves without any sugar, because that balance of probiotics and then you're adding sugar kind of doesn't make sense all the time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I like to spree for the really expensive raw coconut yogurts. Sometimes that's $20 for a jar, but that's what I like and that's what I prioritize. And every once in a while, I'll go for that.
I love it. So when it comes to like the prepackaged convenience foods, the stuff that's on the shelf with the, got a little minion on the front or whatever, something to get the kid to say, "Hey, mommy, I want to buy that," not knowing anything about what's in it. How do you get your kids away from that and trying, the actual food in its rawest form? Thinking of strawberries as a snack instead of, just kind of a random gummy. And I'm not saying that like all prepackaged food is bad, but how do you cross that bridge?
Well, I love that you brought up the cartoon character because that is a marketing tool that's used and understood very deeply by the industry for getting kids' attention, to the point where they're placed on certain shelves that are more at eye level with kids. And usually the eyes of the character, they figured out the exact angle of where the pupil should be to make eye contact. It's down to a science. So I love introducing kids to that fact alone. And kind of kids love good guy, bad guy stories. And not that we're creating any bad guys, but I like introducing them to the idea that there's a game going on and the companies are trying to get your attention. And this is how they do it. Can you believe that? Does that work on you? Yes or no? And then we talk about it. So I think getting to the underbelly of things and really discussing everything